Hello world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to RoboThoughts Zero to Hero series C++ programming in Arduino Mega. Alright guys, we are in lesson number 13 and I am going to show you what Arduino C++ for loop. Alright, so in this particular lesson, I'm going to show you another kind of loop which is basically called for loop. Alright, so whereas the statements or the code in Arduino main loop which we use will run continually and never exit at all, right? That is the standard loop, and the for loop allows us to loop through the code a certain number of times before it comes to the end, right? The one of the common way to use the for loop is with the increment operator, which I showed you in the previous lesson guys, so don't forget that, right? So now let's look into how we use this for loop. So let's get into our IDE, the Arduino IDE, and I'm going to share my screen. Alright, so let's do some coding guys. So it's going to be interesting, though it's going to be pretty short and sweet. I want you guys to start everything from scratch and become a master, right? So while using Arduino, you are going to master on C++ programming. So that's very important. And once we complete this particular series, we will connect this with our other parallel series which is going on right now. That is the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, building autonomous robots and kind of thing. Alright guys. Alright, stay tuned. Now let's do one thing. So this is our main bare minimum code. Alright, so let's say int and I as an object. Okay, int I, oops, what is this? I, and end with a semicolon, and then let's say serial dot begin, and obviously 9600 is the baud rate, that is the speed, semicolon, and then how do we initiate the for loop? You need to say for, okay, for open parenthesis bracket I equals to say 0, and then a semicolon, and then say I is less than 10, okay, and a semicolon, and then I plus plus. You remember this plus plus? In the previous video I showed you how the incremental operator works in the loop, right? And then what we need to do, we need to without fail close this with a curly bracket, and there is a curly bracket closure at the bottom already. So now what we need to do, can you see the indentation? As soon as you come below the for loop, the indentation should be at least 2 tabs after that, right? So that's how it works. If you miss on indentation, the program is not going to run guys, so keep a note of that. Serial dot print, and that is how you are going to print your loop. Now let's say I equals, and let's not declare anything, I'm just going to leave it as open-ended. Alright, and then I'm going to explain this line by line, don't worry about this. And then a semicolon, then serial dot print ln, we are printing the line of what? Of I. Alright, in a closed, open and closed parenthesis, and then you put a semicolon. Alright, now let's take a look. Alright, I think this is gonna work. Let me just check if I am connected to my Arduino Omega. Yes, I am connected to my Mega, and let me check my COM port. I am on COM port 16, and I am going to compile this. The sketch is getting compiled. I don't see any error, so that's a good news so far. Let's compile this fully. There you go. It's taking a bit. Generally, it shouldn't take so much time. It takes few seconds. All right, there you go. Done compiling at the bottom. Now let me upload this code. I am uploading this code into my Arduino Mega. Right, the code has been uploaded. Now let me open the serial monitor by clicking this icon. Alright, there you go guys. Can you see I equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 till 9. So it comes as a loop, right? Let me just share the terminal. Yep, there you go. I hope you guys can see the terminal. So it clearly shows how this particular loop works. So basically guys, it's a pretty simple logic, but let me try to explain step by step how this particular loop works. All right, so what we one second, let me just share my IDE again. Right, so this is the code which we just put, right? So how does this work? So there are basically three different expressions we added, right, between the opening and the closing parenthesis, right, in the curly bracket, that determines how many times the statements in the loop are run before exiting the final loop, right? So when the loop is exited, the program execution continues below the loop. For example, the statements outside the below loop are executed from top to the bottom, right? It always starts from the top. And the body of the loop between the opening and closing braces, which is basically your curly bracket, right? See, can you see it here? Yeah, this one. The curly bracket contains a statement that will run the loop. So those are the important syntax you need to keep in mind. Even if you miss one single closure of the bracket, the curly bracket, the program will not execute. All right, guys. The expressions between the parentheses, right, the closed parentheses, are called the initialize expression. All right, the test expression and the increment expression. You need to keep this in mind. Always make sure that a variable must be defined to use in these three loop expressions, all right, which I showed you just now, right? So for example, in this particular example which I just showed you as a sketch, the integer value is called I. That it's a kind of object, it's an integer value, right? You need to just register in your mind I is an integer value, right? And the three loop expression must appear in order. It has to be in a systematic way, like initialize, test, and then increment, right? So they are separated by the semicolon, which I showed you. Against each lines you need to put a semicolon, right? And the increment expression does not end with a semicolon at all. No semicolon at the increment expression. For example, in the initial expression, the initial expression is run only once. Keep this in mind, guys. It runs only once. That is your bare minimum code on the top, the setup instruction, and once at a time the loop starts. Okay, so it basically initializes our I variable to 0. Okay, in this particular example which I showed you just now, right? And the test expression next to that determines when we break out of the loop. So it is used to set the number of times that the statements in the body of loop are run. Okay, so when the test expression evaluates to true, the statements in the loop body will run only once, and then the increment expression, and then the first time through the loop, and the second time through the loop, and the last time through the loop. That is basically you are saying I is equal to 0 or I is less than 10. So obviously 0 is less than 10. So that is your first time loop which runs it. And then the second time through the loop, what happens is your I is less than 10 in the parenthesis again, which is true, right? So that is the second time it runs, and the last time of course it is I, which will be incremented every time. So that is where the output you can see in the terminal. If you see in the terminal, the output you can see I is equal to 0 and all the way through 9. So that is how this particular loop works, the for loop works. So I hope this is clear, guys, and if you have any questions, do please leave a comment. I will try to explain in a much better fashion. Goal of this particular series is zero to hero. Keep that in mind. So I'm going to walk you through everything from the scratch, step by step. This is typically for a non-technical guys to understand the C program using Arduino Mega, so that over a period of time he or she can connect this lesson with your autonomous robot lesson, and then the artificial intelligence lesson, and then the vision intelligence, which already went through about 20-25 lessons, and I'm going to continue that. So all this combined together, you are going to build a superb ultimate autonomous artificial intelligent robot. Alright guys, so I'm going to come back to you soon in the next video. Do give me a thumbs up and a like, and I will be back soon. Bye bye.